But we were not the only people paying the very real price for irresponsible decisions by governments. Last Wednesday, more than 1,200 people died in France. The next day, another 1,400 people died. On Friday, another 1,400 people died. The normal daily death count in France is around 900 people a day. So this is somewhere between an additional third on top of the norm to more than half as much again on top of the norm. The deadly situation in France is so bad that the mortuaries in Paris are turning the dead away because they are full and there's nothing they can do. So what is causing the surging body count? One thing: a lack of air conditioning due to extremism on the part of climate activists who are willing to let real people die in order to theoretically soothe their fears, even though the results don't actually do that either. And while their elderly citizens die of heat stroke in the ovens that are their homes and apartments, the French government just prioritizes virtue signaling on the climate above keeping vulnerable human beings that depend on them alive. And they do this even though outsourcing their productivity actually raises the global carbon emissions. Because the French people still want their stuff, only now it's being made in dirtier countries, and then massive amounts of fuel are being used to ship those products back to France. When your actions are that symbolically oriented, that illogical, and that willfully reality blind to the outcomes, it is not actually concern about the climate, or you would be doing what is best for the climate. And that's not outsourcing. Which means that what this is a cult. And as a cult, they merely acknowledge that the mass deaths are a horrible situation, and then continue to deliberately cause them. This is so incomprehensible to us in America that thousands of journalists, influencers, and commenters have been cracking jokes on social media to mercilessly mock the insanely detached handling of this and other serious crises by European governments. But the truth is that this could happen anywhere, including here. I know you don't want to admit it, but that's the truth. This is what happens when you coddle the fragile and the unreasonable in your society, give them the spotlight, validate their craziness, and turn over power to them by electing people that go out of their way to cater to the most radical activist elements in society instead of focusing on the balanced and rational people in the middle. There is nothing funny about the fact that when you make the choice to do that, which we are one election away from doing, the results are actually bloody. real people pay with their lives. And the wise among us learn the lesson that lies at the heart of the matter, rather than never skimming below the surface and laughing, in the belief that we are immune to the same fate if we allow ourselves to be subjected to the governance of a radical political class of elite ideologues, which is what Europe has done. These deaths of actual human beings that somebody out there loved were entirely preventable. The technology for air conditioning has been around for 124 years thanks to us. And in Europe, ideology is still winning out over life and death. That should scare the hell out of everybody to know that human beings are capable of being that captured. And to watch an entire population being held hostage by a handful of extremists with a death grip on power. In France, only 1 in 4 homes, a quarter of them, have air conditioning. And that has remained the situation despite that country declaring once in a generation heat waves multiple times in the length of just 1/3 of an average lifespan. They did it in 1993, in 2003, and in 2025. Yet, instead of blaming their own government and their own life-threatening decisions, Parisians are blaming a country on the other side of the world, America. The deputy mayor of Paris, Audrey Pulvar, had a bit of an outburst on Instagram this week, during which she angrily and nasally declared that the United States bears a significant amount of responsibility for grandparents in France dying of a heat stroke. Her claim was not even creative, just cult parroting, which surprises no one. She condemned Americans for using our air conditioning, claiming that we were the reason that climate change was happening, and without which it would be less hot in France in the middle of summer, and fewer people would be dying. We will return to the facts on that claim in a moment. Meanwhile, she had no words of condemnation at all for China, which alone is responsible for 1/3 of the entire planet's CO2 emissions. Selective on your principles there, aren't you, Madam Mayor? She also seemed to be completely unaware of the hardcore fact that even if the United States of America vanished into the ether tomorrow, taking its 11% share of global emissions with it, the temperature would not drop by a single degree based on that change, honey. But climate extremism has never been about the facts. It is a religion, an apocalyptic cult, which is why, instead of making a case based on the scientific facts, they merely call you a climate denier, which is just their word for a blasphemer. Religion. She wants us to join the cult, commit suicide, let our people start dying en masse too, And all to accomplish exactly what France is accomplishing by doing that. Nothing. So here is another fact for you, Madam Mayor. Residential air conditioning in the United States accounts for roughly 3% of our total emissions. So we could all turn our air conditioning off, and our 11% emissions would not drop by even close to 1%. That's called math. We won't be joining your cult. You can cry if you want to. Meanwhile, the bureaucratic nightmare in France when it comes to trying to get air conditioning has left your people literally dying, and the rest of them literally jumping into public fountains as though they were swimming pools, desperate to cool off so that they don't die too. Go stand in the fountains fully clothed is your official plan to survive for an entire country of people. You've turned your people into desperate animals, Madam Mayor. I would just point out that that worked out real well for Marie Antoinette. Good luck to you. Now, the reality is that the French can do what they like and elect who they want to elect. But if you think that you are going to have so much as an influence, much less a say, on what we do over here among the sane people, you are out of your mind. And unless you plug that elitist hole in your superior and factually ignorant face, the next time that Germany starts eyeing you, you can figure it out for yourself, sweetie. In the meantime, we will not be letting our elderly people die, or disabled people like me, to win the approval of the French. In fact, we will not even be turning our air conditioning down a single degree. We will continue to blast it on 100-degree days at a glorious 72 degrees inside, and without even feeling bad about it. In fact, while taking pride in it. And there's not a damn thing that you can do about it. That's not true for your people, Madam Mayor, as they die under your sweaticide when a simple window unit would save them, and you deny them that. One last fact, Frenchie. Every household in France could have a basic air conditioning unit via a window unit for a total of $4 billion. This year alone, you have earmarked $41 billion for so-called green spending that raises the global emissions via outsourcing. So you have the money to save lives. Letting people die is a choice, which means that we have to consider that maybe the dead pensioners are a feature and not a bug, since their death means less strain on your socialized medicine. And to top it all off, you can even use the body count of the people that you needlessly killed as so-called proof of climate change, when all it actually proves is how stupid and heartless you are, Madam Mayor. and the people of Europe will have to continue taking it for exactly as long as they choose to. I will leave you with this. The Statue of Liberty was given to us by the people of France, our first ally. The French people gave us this gift to celebrate the end of slavery after the Civil War. It was the actual ordinary people of that country who paid for it. It was their engineer, Gustave Eiffel, who designed it. It was their sculptor, Frederick Auguste Bartholdi, who made it. It was a labor of love that took decades to become a reality. On July 3rd, 1986, 100 years after the iconic statue was first revealed, President Ronald Reagan delivered a speech rededicating Lady Liberty and celebrating the lighting of her torch. He said, "We are the keepers of the flame of liberty. We hold it high tonight for the world to see, a beacon of hope, a light unto the nations." And so, with joy and celebration, and with a prayer that this lamp shall never be extinguished, I ask you all to join me in this symbolic act of faith, this lighting of Miss Liberty's torch. Happy 4th of July. That's it for me this week. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would ask you to please help me build this podcast into a success by clicking the like and the follow buttons, because that is what does the trick in making these things successful, and it doesn't cost anything to do. And most of all, I hope you come back again next week. Until then, have a good week, my friends.